Hi, my name is Joy Yamaguchi, and I'm the Public Programs Coordinator at the Japanese American National Museum. On behalf of JANM, I want to thank you for tuning in to today's Artist Talk, presented by Taiji Terasaki Studios, in conjunction with Transcendience Heroes at Borders, an exhibition that opened up at JANM in early 2020. Please note that the views expressed within this video may not necessarily reflect the views of JANM. Thank you, and thank you for watching today.
Hello, today we are honored to talk to Jonathan Ryan, Executive Director of RAICES, a nonprofit that defends the rights of immigrants and refugees. He has been in this leadership position since 2018. RAICES serves Texas and beyond. Jonathan, how are you? Good to see you.
I'm doing very well. I'm doing very well. And I would just make one correction. I've actually been at RAICES since 2008.
Oh, of course. Yeah, of course. 2008. Perhaps this past 4 years or the Trump administration has triggered many issues. And so maybe we begin there, like, or you could speak to the mission of RAICES, but what has it been like for you for the past 4 years?
Yeah, well, I would have to say it's been a singularly difficult time. There's no doubt that the attacks against immigrants, immigrant communities, an intersectional group of communities, mostly communities kind of defined by being diverse communities of color, have all been under attack for the last 4 years in ways that we've never seen before. But it's important, I think, to place that in context of the fact that we are also communities that have been fighting against oppression, against persecution, well before the Trump administration. Yes. And the things that Trump has done, because he's still, to date, the president, right. He could not have done without the years and the decades of infrastructure work. Really building a machine. They talk about immigration as a broken system, right? It is a well-oiled machine that works perfectly for the purpose for which it was designed, which is to separate families, to deport and detain people, to oppress communities of color in this country. That's what it was built to do, and it does that like no other entity. And that was not something that Trump conjured up in January of 2017. That is something that has been built up over decades, most significantly since 2003, when the Department of Homeland Security was actually brought into existence. This is the newest, biggest department in our government. It only came into existence in response to the 9/11 attacks, recharacterized our relationship with immigration through that lens of homeland security, right? And grew up as an organization mostly under the watch of President Barack Obama. As we say in the movement, in the immigration movement, that Barack Obama built the car. And all Trump had to do was step into the driver's seat and press on the gas. And that's what he did. He essentially scaled up. He deepened the severity, and he automated in a vast way a machine that was created by his predecessors.
Well, that's so profound, and I truthfully haven't thought of it that way. I'm sure Barack Obama didn't intend it to be taken to those extremes that Trump did, but wow, I'm trying to comprehend this. And
I know that I'm sure he would say he did not intend for it to reach the heights that it did under the Trump administration, but it reached great heights. We reached great heights under the Obama administration. This is where family detention became the norm for refugees seeking asylum at our southern border, taking women and children and putting them into private prisons as a means of deterrence, to send a message to refugees not to come was Obama's policy. We had to take him to court to get him to stop doing that. And so, you know, I think a reason that we got to where we were in Trump, to maybe reframe this, is yes, it has to do with the actions taken by his predecessors of both political parties. We have to really, and I think to really understand where we sit as immigrants. I'm an immigrant to this country. I became a citizen in law school. There's never been a pro-immigrant U.S. president. And we have to be open and clear. We have to be clear-eyed when we discuss this about where the immigration movement sits and where the history of the U.S. government sits with respect to immigrants. So that is true for what got us to where we were.
So what are you making any prediction with Biden and for example, his selection of Secretary of Homeland Security? What do you think of all this?
It can't be denied that that the selection of Alejandro Mayorkas to take over at the Department of Homeland Security is well received. This is an individual whose name is associated with Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals, or DACA. When this individual was under the Obama administration at the head of USCIS, that the DACA program was rolled out. So definitely it's a good sign. And just in terms of, you know, what you've seen over the last administration was the people who were being assigned into the head of the department were coming straight from those enforcement agencies.
Yes.
So you would have the head of ICE or the head of Border Patrol being placed at the head of the Department of Homeland Security. And so, you know, I mean, personnel is policy. And so when you bring someone to lead a whole organization who comes from the enforcement division, that's sending a message and obviously characterizes everything that is done. And so you can see the signal, if you will, that is being sent by bringing someone who is the head of USCIS to now head the department, that this might be more of a framework and more of the posture of the department being more geared towards things like DACA, things like deferred action, which is a good sign. It does not change the fact, I want to say, that the Department of Homeland Security is a fundamentally flawed and corrupted department inside of our country. It is an enshrinement of xenophobia as government. It is kind of public relations cloaked in government garmentry and the pomp and circumstance of government. Right? Department of Homeland Security exists to stop terrorists from knocking buildings down, from letting 9/11 happen again. Right? That is the framework. That's the enabling statement, the mission statement. When you put this agency in charge of humanitarian crisis, of human social services, of the wounded bodies of asylum seekers, right? Are handing themselves into the hands of those who are charged with stopping the next 9/11. You have a fundamental mismatch. You have a fundamental problem, right? That no person, not even an Alejandro Mayorkas, can fix by their mere presence. So we have to take a deeper look at this department. We have to take a look at getting rid of the Department of Homeland Security. Our country existed for many, many years before the Department of Homeland Security came about, and it is far from impossible to imagine our country being able to continue without it.
I see. I mean, is it true that they are the ones that are proposing the Migrant Protection Protocol Agency? I'm hoping that you would explain that.
Yes. So to be clear, what the Trump administration has done in its 4 years is essentially stop all meaningful access to asylum. Individuals seeking protection at our southern border traditionally were allowed to move forward in the process. Some were taken into detention centers. Many more were actually released and provided with a court date to show up to continue their cases. What we have now, under what the Trump administration called in its Orwellian genius, the Migrant Protection Protocols, which is also known as the Remain in Mexico policy. does nothing, to be clear, to protect any migrant whatsoever. What it does is it forces people who have, been displaced from their homes, have undertaken harrowing journeys against their own wills, in most cases, to try to get to the closest reasonable source of safety, which is in many cases in this hemisphere, the United States, and then stopped at that last leg, that last mile, stopped at the port of entry and told to just languish on the streets of Mexico, waiting months, now years, just to see an immigration judge. And I've traveled down to Matamoros, where there is a refugee camp, and you can see the line on the ground, right, where the tents are laid out, and they there's no discernible reason when you look at it, why is there a clump of tents, and then at this one area there's just not another tent beyond that, even though there's more room. And when I talk with the people who were there, saying, why are you all bunched together here? There's plenty of space. And they said, look up, because they're right next to the immigration offices in Mexico. You don't have to go into Mexico. You just cross the border and right there. And they pointed to the cameras, the surveillance cameras that the Mexican authorities had, which were really watching the port of entry, the traffic. They're saying, if we step outside of the line of view of those cameras, we're gone. The cartels will come. They will kidnap us and they will take us. And, this is the policy, this is the state at which the Trump administration has kind of essentially ground humanitarian protection and asylum to a halt at the border. And we heard just last week, President-elect Biden announce that he is not going to change this policy.
Oh, really? Wow.
That, and this is unfortunately what we have seen time and time again, is a connection made, wrongly so, between humanitarianism, between following the law, the law that we as the United States created,
right,
and spread across the world and continue to enforce upon other governments around the world, refusing to follow that law under the misguided apprehension that this will create a flood of immigrants, a flood of people to come to our border. I take the challenge that, frankly, it's upon our shoulders. As leaders in a movement and immigrant myself, we have to present a more positive message. We have to show in earnesty what our vision is, which is a country and a government where people can come to our border and can seek asylum and be let into our country and be allowed to participate in our country. Because even back when we were letting people come into this country seeking asylum, we still leave them without an ID card, without the ability to work, without any semblance of participation in our society. And so what alternative is it to be languishing on the street of Matamoros, or to be holed up in a detention center in South Texas, or to be left to be destitute and essentially kind of removed from our society if you are free? This is not what we call a nice to have, right? This is the fuel that has powered this country, ergo this world, for 500 years. The free movement of people. And a place for people to go and to be reborn and to rejuvenate a nation at the same time. Am I allowed to curse on your podcast?
Yes.
And we're fucking it up. And we are fucking it up. Treating something that is core and critical, sustaining and nourishing, as this nice to have at the best of times, and like a, not right now in the worst of times. We are really forgetting what got us here. And so the status quo right now is that we have a president who has left us with nothing happening at the southern border, and an incoming president for whom the return to normalcy is going to be treated as some kind of problem.
So, God, it's just turning it all around, and the attitudes and the hopes of what this country was born with, and how to to turn it around and shake it up. And I don't know if you have any easy answers.
But I will say this, I do think that there is a need for a sea change and for a reset. Taking a look at the things that we're fighting against,
Mm-hmm.
and separately from the things that we're fighting for, because I think that we as a movement and as a people, immigrants in particular, we have been fighting against so much for so long, that there is a trauma that lingers. I think it is such that you can at a certain point start to conflate together on one single list things that you're fighting against, which are many, and the things you are fighting for, which are actually few. And when you achieve these things that you are fighting for, so many of the things you are fighting against go away. And so I think that there are things that we are fighting for in this country as immigrants, which include the fundamental universal things that everyone in this country has ever fought for: freedom, economic empowerment, permanency of home, and family unity. And I would say the ability to exercise some agency within or against the system that holds power over you, which is what, a citizen would call the ability to vote, or the ability to press on lawmakers or elected officials. This ability to have a voice in the system that you are subjected to. And so it's not a simple answer, but it is at a certain point simple, because activism is sexy, right? What we're fighting for is quite boring, right? I'm trying to get this world a lot more boring, is my goal.
I don't know if you've heard of Suru for Solidarity. This is a Japanese American organization, and they were going to make a national march to Washington, D.C., and they were really going to pull it off, and it was going to be more than 100,000 people. Anyway, their march was to protest detention centers, and they're calling for all detention centers to be closed. I think there's a symbolism in those detention centers that we have to realize that they're wrong. Is that too simplified a movement, or what do you think?
I think it's the position of RAICES that we have reified the human body. We have made it again legal in this country to essentially buy and sell the human body through the construction, not of now labor per se, through slavery, but through this infrastructure of detention, right? Which does put people there to work, right? If you are in an immigration detention center, they have jobs that are only conducted by immigrants, right? They make their profit by not hiring custodial staff, not hiring kitchen staff, not hiring laundry staff, but rather they offer a program, an activity for those people who are locked up inside, whose only other option is to sit in their cot all day long. So of course you take the option to go work in the, sweat it out in the kitchen or in the laundry room to make $1 a day. And this is how the private prison makes its profit, right? Off the back of labor of the people who it's holding inside, but also making money off of their mere presence there. They make money off of their presence. They make money every time they bring a person in, bring a person out. And so, what we've done is we've recreated the commoditization of human beings that existed under slavery, not necessarily by enslaving the body, but by creating an infrastructure around the body that buys and sells it like a chattel good. And so, yes, it is not too simple to say that we need to get rid of detention and of private prisons. Private prisons are the end of freedom in this country. These are publicly traded corporations, right? Who under the law, what do publicly traded corporations have to do for their stockholders? they have to grow. And how does a private prison grow? And that is why they have invested so heavily in building immigration prisons. It's also why they've invested so heavily in lobbying lawmakers to increase the criminalization and the detention policies of the government, such that when we hear elected officials from our government speaking to the public about crises and emergencies, you think that this is a public servant. You think that this is a person who is speaking based on the interests of this nation. But trust me, when you hear a politician speaking about sticking more immigrants into detention centers, what you are hearing is the private prison industry using our government as an advertising agency.
Wow.
To sell us on the concept that we have to increase the penalties, the criminalization and penalties of immigration.
Very powerful words. And wow, you touched on so many, clarified many things for myself and hopefully for many people that listen to this. But I'm just, almost it's like praying that good things will come. There will be changes, in the 4 years, but then beyond that. I wonder if I think I talked to you a bit about the purpose of the role of art and how it could help to communicate some of these issues that you're talking about.
Absolutely.
And,
yeah. I'm a big believer. My personal philosophy is that I'm a lawyer. I did not study law until I didn't even think of going to law school until after college. I studied comparative literature in college. I did mostly theater. The law was not in the cards until later. But I saw the agency that lawyers had in society to do not great things, and so it was a determination to explore that as a way to potentially do good things. And I do see the law that I practice and the law that lawmakers and politicians pass as downstream of culture, and culture is downstream of art. And we are in a very litigious society. I mean, we are a nation of lawyers. We are all very sophisticated lawyers and pundits. We've become a nation of pundits now in a pretty short amount of time. But art and artistic expression continues to be that medium of connection. I won't even say communication, because it could be something even beyond communication, of connection between human beings, for which we still have not built a hardened and entrenched defense mechanism. And so much, I think, of what we deal with in the immigration advocacy space or in the courtroom is a failure of humans to connect with other humans. And so, until we kind of, I think, become more adept at utilizing the tools that are before us, that include art, that include song and and dance and the kind of the unartificial or unbureaucratized forms of human expression, I don't see how we're going to get to the result. I think we're just going to veer farther and farther off course, frankly, until we do the fundamental reset of direction that is needed. And if you achieve that, frankly, I think the changes that we seek happen as a matter of course, actually.
It's wow. I was just in a meeting discussing something with someone, and he was saying, we're always trying to correct, but we need to communicate. We need to make that connection. So very similar to what you're saying. I love that. I love that you have that vision, actually, and I think you're right, and it gives me hope as what we could accomplish too. Anyway, I would like to, because of your views and how you see things, I would love to do a collaborative project in the future. And so we desperately need, artists need support from thinkers like you. I sincerely mean that. And so if we
We
can
need each
connect,
other. We need each other.
yes,
Mm.
yes. So let's do it. I mean, or you know, or you connect to other artists. It's not, you know, I'm not, but yeah, no, I think, geez, that's a great thing
Mhm.
to strive for.
Mhm.
But,
What we need, I mean, what we need something, right?
mhm,
We need something.
mhm,
There is something out there. Um, there is a new, you know, to fathom what it was for the Statue of Liberty to be erected,
mhm,
you
mhm,
know, to have lived in that time, you know, I mean, and I'm not, I'm in no illusions. I'm not a, you know, a Pollyannish person. I understand that history is complex
mhm,
and nuanced, and
mhm.
that, you know, the story I was written is not always the way it played out.
Right.
Of course. Nevertheless, there are certain symbols that we hold as
Mhm,
important in our lives, right?
right.
And it is the shared narrative around those symbols
Mhm,
that's critical in terms of our common understanding. And
mhm,
you know, we have these symbols like the Statue of Liberty. We're so strong and so tied to our national identity. We are so proud
mhm,
of that statue
mhm,
and what it means, what it
mhm.
says, you
Right.
know.
Right.
Uh, how as a nation can we have that experience again
Mm,
of seeing something beautiful? When was the last time we as a nation saw something beautiful come into being
mm,
like that?
mhm,
I would love to be part of that.
mm.
I would love to behold
Wow.
that, you know.
Yeah. Jeez.
Only what, 120, 130, 40 years ago? Not even that long ago.
Yeah, Jonathan, you were going to bring me to tears of, yeah, no, it's definitely true. Um,
Mhm.
yeah. So speaking with you, you know, I really do feel hope and something to work towards. And I really appreciate the time that you've given to talk to me. Um,
Thank you.
we, yeah, I'm sure the people that will listen to this will also appreciate it. So thank you so much, so much.
Thank you. It's been an honor and a pleasure.
Oh, thank you very much. Um, so maybe we'll leave the interview at that. But again, my gratitude and please stay safe. We're not quite over this yet, but there is, yeah, there is the hope. I mean, there is there is the opening that it will. So
There's a light at the end of the tunnel. Thank
yeah,
goodness. Thank
there is.
goodness.
But thank you
Yeah.
again.
Thank you, Taiji.
Yeah, and good luck with everything. And thank you for all that you do. And we'll continue to follow what you're doing. So thank you so
Great.
much. Okay.
Thank you.